Good day, scholars. Mr. Alan is here again to take you in another interesting topic. So I want you to have fun learning as we go through this interesting topic today. So in today's lesson, we're going to be treating biodiversity. That's the topic. Can you echo that? Biodiversity. We are learning to explore biodiversity around us and the kingdoms of life. So we want to explore different variety of biodiversity that we can find in and around our physical environment. We're also learning to discover the microscopic world because there are a lot of microscopic organisms that are found in the air, in water, and in soil. Most of them you can't see, that's why they are called microscopic organisms. So we'll be exploring them and seeing the instrument or apparatus we use to see them or to study them in our environment. What I'm looking for is your ability to identify biodiversity around you and what makes up the kingdoms of life. You can echo that again in your mind. Also, what I'm looking for is for you to develop microscopy skills and give vivid illustrations about the microscopic world. By vivid illustration, I mean clear illustrations or explanations or analysis about these microorganisms. Moving on to the next slide. What do we have there? We have the vocabulary. We're coming across words like biodiversity, survey, observe, ecology, ecologist, classify, habitat, quadrant, line transit, species, kingdoms, taxonomy, domains, organisms, microscope, magnification, object, and image. I want you to take out time to study this vocabulary during your leisure time and relate the meanings to what we're going to be discussing in this class. So you have the liberty to always pause this video and take down notes when necessary. This is a picture trying to show a caption of biodiversity. But around biodiversity, we have a lot of things like agricultural, environment, we have reforestation, eco-friendly, we have conservation, we have acidification, clean energy, biodegradable materials, materials that can easily decompose in the environment. So this is just a clear picture to depict what I'm trying to do in this lesson today. Biodiversity is the study of different plants and animals in our immediate environment and how they relate with the physical environment, how they relate with elements of weather, how they relate with the climate, how they relate with non-living things. So in the environment, living things and non-living things interact with each other, which gives us the word ecology. And we always look for an eco-friendly environment that will suit our existence as living things, which includes plants and animals. Okay, let's look further into this lesson. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity, or biological diversity as otherwise called, refers to the variety of life on earth. Now there is a variety of life on earth. What that simply means is that we have different species of plants and animals that are scattered across the face of the globe. They are found in different habitats, such as the terrestrial or the land habitat, the aquatic or water habitat, the arboreal or animals that tend to be on the air all the time, like on treetops, mountain tops, electric communication cables, and so on. So it also includes all living things, including plants, animals, microorganisms, and their unique characteristics. That's what characterizes them to be an individual in their immediate environment. So we'll be looking at this and lots more. Okay, this picture also tells us more about biodiversity. Biodiversity is the way in which plants and animals coexist in the ecosystem. By coexisting, we mean how they interact on a daily basis. Now, plants depend on the sun as its major source of energy, being a major producer to produce its own food and stay alive. Then animals in turn depend on plants for their survival. They feed on the fruits or the foods gotten from plants in order to release energy to carry out their daily activities. So all this put together has to do with how they coexist, how they interact in the ecosystem. Now, coral reefs form some of the most productive ecosystems. They provide shelter for many of the marine life. Animals that use the coral reefs as their home include sponges, fish-like, groupers, clownfish, eels. Eels are tiny fishes. They have a worm-like structure and so on. An example of biodiversity is the way in which mangroves and coral reefs help each other. That's to say they coexist, they interact, they share common trends in the environment. Coral reefs protect mangroves by being a barrier for them so that the waves would have to get through the coral reefs before reaching the mangroves. Mangroves helps coral reefs because the roots also provide shelter for some small sea creatures that couldn't survive in the coral reefs at that young age. Now you could find some small sea animals perching around the roots of the mangrove. The mangrove is a water plant that grows to a certain size and height. So around it you find small sea animals attached to it, and they depend on it for their shelter, for protection, and for feeding also. The coral reef also houses some animals like the clownfish, sea stars, or called the starfish, and other sea animals. So in a nutshell, biodiversity has to do with how we relate with our physical environment, how plants relate with the environment, how living things relate with their immediate environment in order to stay alive. So in studying biodiversity, we'll be looking at different species of plants. You want to talk about plant species, you want to talk about trees, you want to talk about shrubs, food crops, cash crops in the environment. For animals, you want to talk about the invertebrates and the vertebrates. You want to talk about mammals, you want to talk about amphibians, you want to talk about pisces or the fishes, the aves or the birds in the environment, and you want to talk about the reptiles that possess scales on their body. Now all this forms the biodiversity of life. I call it the richness of the environment. Moving on. In this picture, it's still trying to depict what biodiversity is. You can see plants in this picture, different plants, different species of them. You could see animals here, you could see humans, because humans occupy the highest hierarchy in the animal kingdom and the classification of living things. So, what this picture is simply depicting is that all these animals and plants depend on each other. You see man having a hoe in his hand to farm. He grows crops in order to feed on them so that he can have energy to carry out his daily activities. Now, you have the birds feeding on grains on the ground, grains gotten from plants. Then the plant helps to keep the environment beautiful. It helps to produce enough oxygen so that animals can breathe in oxygen and stay alive. And this cycle or human activities continues on a daily basis from one generation to another. Biodiversity is also seen as the web of life. By web, we simply mean the way the spider web is interconnected or intertwined, where a lot of things happen within the web. The web serves as a means of shelter. It also serves as a means of trap to trap tiny insects for the spider to eat or to feed upon. So linking that web, there are food chains and food web in the environment where animals depend on plants, which are the producers for food. Then one animal feeds on another animal. So animals who feed on that animal for food are called predators, while the animal that is being fed upon is a prey. So all these feeding relationships takes place in order for organisms to survive. Remember, Charles Darwin says in the environment it is only the survival of the fittest. So for it to survive, you must be fit to compete for food, for space, for air, for water, and other things the environment or nature provides. Look at this biodiversity. You can see biodiversity in the aquatic environment, which has to do with the water occupied environment. You can see sharks here. Sharks feed on other smaller or lower animals in the sea. And the smaller fishes or smaller animals feed on what we call phytoplanktons or water plants, and this cycle continues. You can see the butterfly feeding on nectar, carrying out pollination. You can see the jellyfish in this picture here. You can see the koala here on this tree feeding on green grass or materials from plants, and so on. You can see this beautiful environment with watershed going all the way. You can find both plants and animals interacting in this environment. So this gives the richness of life. Now, biodiversity is very, very important in nature. That's how plants produces food, animals depend on them, and one animal feeds on another, and this continues in our physical environment on a daily basis. So what is the importance of these interrelationships or interactions between plants and animals in their environment? And why do we have species of plants or herbs? There are so many advantages attached to it. Now, the first is that it serves as a means of aesthetic and scientific value. Now, the value of beauty and scientific discovery cannot be measured, but are extremely important to life on Earth. Now, aesthetic simply means ornamentation. Plants and animals serve as an ornament or a beautification to any part of the environment you find them. Now, you look at plants like flowers, you look at trees, you look at shrubs, look at the sunflowers, the rose flowers, and many more. They beautify the environment. They give you this appealing sensation when you take a look at them, especially from a distance. It gives you a very nice look. So nature is beautiful and it makes us feel happy and relate well with them. Okay, another thing you should know about biodiversity that's to do with plants and animals is that it has a direct economic value. Maintaining biodiversity has a direct economic value to humans. Humans depend on plants and animals for food, clothing, energy, that's the energy for us to do work, then medicine and shelter. Most plants serve as herbs that are made into medicines. They are processed by the pharmaceutical industries into the drugs we take, like tablets, like syrups, and so on. Then as a means of shelter, we get various construction materials from plants, and we're able to use them to construct our buildings in order to protect us or shelter us from the adverse climatic conditions. Biodiversity also has tourism value, where people go from one place to the other to view various species of plants that are not so common, or of animals that are particular or peculiar to a particular continent or country, and this generates revenue or income. Then generally, as humans, we tend to understand each other more and other animals, so as to know how to interact with them in terms of protection, conservation, and ensuring that the environment is safe for us and our future generation. In this last part of the session, we are looking at the classification of living things. Living things are classified into 7 levels of classifications, where we have the kingdom. The kingdom is the largest in the classification system. We have the phylum or division. This has to do with where plants and animals are divided into, that is smaller than the kingdom. Then you go to a smaller classification, which is the class. Now this has to do with the class where certain organisms fall. Just like the way you classify, where you have mathematics textbook in the shelf, English textbook, science textbooks, where you have pencils and erasers. You need them to be well sorted so that whenever you have need for them, you can easily access them. Then you have the order, you have the family, you have the genus, and finally the species. So we use this to classify living things, both plants and animals, by categorizing them or sorting them into these groups. We're going to do more when we see in the physical class setting. Okay, so this is a more detailed one. You can pause this video at every point to read up the meaning of each of the 7 kingdom classification as portrayed in this image or this picture. There's something you can use to remember the classification so that you don't forget them. It's a mnemonic. Now it says King Philip came over for good spaghetti, to mean kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, which is the smallest or the smallest unit of classification in the classification system. Or you could also say kids playing catch on freeway gets smashed, to recall this concept. Now you can pause this video to look at the parts of the microscope, and we'll be talking more about the different parts and their function in our subsequent class. So this is another one that explains what each part does. We're going to pause this video and see them one after the other. Thank you for your audience and thank you for being in class. I'll see you in my next learning segment. Bye for now from Zoologist Alan.